Welcome to Chapter 2 of Model 3, where we will be digging into financing concept models and mechanisms that exist beyond national and government financing for equitable financing. Before we look at some examples of innovative financing, let's consider different categories of non-government financing to have an overall understanding, which include: first, voluntary contributions; second, front-loading and debt management; third, partnerships. It is worth keeping in mind that these can overlap with each other, and innovative financing models might fit into more than one category. Let's start to look at these different categories and examples of innovative financing for equitable education. Voluntary contributions, which includes corporate social responsibility or CSR, contributions from non-government actors, in-kind donations, and cash donations. Let's first look at CSR through the example of Microsoft, who has a strong focus on equity through targeting many of the socio-economic factors that we considered at the very beginning of this course. This includes inclusive economic growth, including access to digital skills and protecting fundamental rights by ensuring access to education for those who are excluded. Through their CSR programs, they have helped address two key barriers when it comes to reaping the benefits of technology, connectivity, and digital skills. So far, Microsoft has trained 4.6 million people in 2022 with in-demand digital skills and connected them to opportunities in the digital economy. And they have helped more than 50 million people, unserved rural communities globally gain access to affordable broadband since 2017. What's particularly interesting is that we can consider training and infrastructure development as an example of an in-kind donation as opposed to cash donations, which is another type of voluntary contribution. Another interesting approach to voluntary contributions is through branded products, so-called donation with purchase, whereby a proportion is donated to a cause, in this case to support educational equity. We can consider a couple of examples here from brands that you may have heard of before. The first is IKEA, who use its current infrastructure, a global furniture brand, and stores to collect funds that are then channeled through organizations, in this case UNICEF and Save the Children. Here, IKEA soft toys were branded so a proportion of the profit, in this case $1.30, are donated to a cause, in this case out of school children and educational quality. Since 2003, the IKEA Foundation has already raised $85.4 million and reached 1 million children globally. Another brand is Product Rate, which engages the private sector based on customer choices to brand products with the Product Rate logo. As with the previous example, a percentage of revenue is then sent to the Global Fund, which works with people affected by HIV and AIDS. These examples of branded products help to raise funds through voluntary contributions and also help to raise awareness of important issues among consumers, offering them a way to contribute on a voluntary basis. However, we need to consider the impact of these mechanisms in terms of the small fraction of profits that are donated, as well as the fact that they encourage consumerism, front-loading and debt management. Another approach to education financing is found in country debt. This can include front-loading through impact bonds, where an investor can pay upfront for capital that will have social impact. It can also include debt swaps, where a country's foreign debt can be transferred to support a specific sector or project as a refinancing deal. In this case, debt for education would be seen as swapping a country's debt for investing in education, and more specifically in equitable education. An interesting example is found between Spain and Ibero-American countries, where negotiations for debt swap began in 2005 and eventually resulted in 16 Ibero-American summit of heads of states and governments, which called upon leaders to further promote debt for education swaps. In December 2005, Spain canceled $10 million of debt to El Salvador, who deposited repayments to invest in the construction of rural schools and provisions of textbooks. An example of front-loading through corporate bonds for education is from the Zero Dropout project in Thailand, supported by bonds from the Sansiri Public Company Limited that were donated to the Equitable Education Fund Thailand. The project has managed to raise 100 million Thai baht, equivalent to just under $3 million in less than 2 minutes when the bonds first went out for sale. The funding is allocated so that 80% goes to preventing children from dropping out of school by supporting traveling expenses, breakfast, and volunteers to support schools and teachers. The remaining 20% goes to academic research and management development to help create a sustainable ecosystem for education. Partnerships. Finally, let's look at education financing through partnerships. These partnerships involve many different actors and can take many forms. For example, they can be interministerial partnership between different ministries, public-private partnerships between public and private entities. They can be partnerships between international organizations and local NGOs, or between private sector and the local community. A great example of partnership is found in the Learning Coin project, a conditional cash transfer program using data analytic target at migrant learners and out-of-school children in Thailand. The project's goal is to incentivize these children to stay in the education system while allowing them to support their parents. It is funded by public and private sector, namely the Equitable Education Fund Thailand, the POSCO 1% Foundation, and True Corporation, and implemented by UNESCO Bangkok, the Ministry of Education, and partners. As we can see in this diagram, step 1 is for children to enroll, learn, and receive feedback and encouragement from their teachers. Step 2 allows for the collection of data on student achievement. For example, how many pages they have read or how much time they have spent studying. Step 3, students' reading achievement and data is analyzed. And in step 4, a monthly payment is made to parents based on the continuous daily efforts, improvements, and achievements. As a result, this example of innovative financing shows us how this initiative can not only improve literacy and reading habits, but also reduce the risk of school dropouts by supporting the economic sustainability of students' families. Another example is an outcome-based contract, also called Pay for Success model, where the funders will pay for the education service only when the outcomes are met. For example, in India, where the Quality Education India Development Impact Bond, QEI-DIB, was launched through 4 education providers to reduce the gap in learning outcomes. More specifically, its focus was to improve literacy and numeracy for 200,000 students in 4 states in the country. Among the different providers, they focus on serving vulnerable groups and areas by supporting community learning centers in less privileged urban areas, remedial center to provide additional academic support, deployment of EdTech software to improve English and maths capability, and a school leadership program. According to Brookings, the impact of such bonds is still emerging and results are difficult to measure given that the COVID-19 pandemic struck right in the middle of the 4 years project. But what they did find was the pandemic meant a need for flexibility for different partners and actors to get together and find solutions, with important lessons learned for the rolling out of such social impact bonds in the future. At an international level, a great example of a multilateral partnership for equitable education financing is the Education Cannot Wait initiative, the UN's Global Fund for Education in Emergencies. Here, investments are made at country level through 2 main funding windows: the Multi-Year Resilience Program (MYRP) and the First emergency response (FER), and a third smaller funding stream to support global goods called the Acceleration Facility (AF). A total of $712.2 million has been invested so far, with evidence of impact showing 6.9 million children and adolescents have been reached, including 62,274 children with disabilities. 31% of children reached were refugees, while 14% were internally displaced persons, IDPs, and the remaining 55% were other affected populations. This is a clear example of how financing is targeted towards vulnerable groups to reduce disparities and exclusion and increase equity in education. These are just some examples of innovative financing and shows us just how many options there are to fund equitable education. They also show us the power of partnership that can lead to a huge movement for increasing equitable educational quality for all.